Hi, I'm John Warren. I live in Waihi, and today I'm drawing your attention to a problem that I think needs fixing. First, a few things just to help put this in context. I began teaching secondary school maths in Cornwall, England in 1973. The 80s came along, and the possibility of personal computers with it. I saw the potential for them both in an education context and in administrative situations, so I started getting into that. Came to New Zealand in 1990, and in 1991 I was appointed head of computing at Waihi College, where I remained until I resigned from that position in 2009. Now, I'm throwing that into the mix just to try and indicate that I'm a clear logical thinker, and I've had extensive experience both analysing and taking part in administrative systems. Now to some medical history. In December 2012, on the advice of my GP, who'd been treating me for severe abdominal pains, I presented myself at A&E at Thames, who had the astuteness to do a CT scan. The scan revealed a tumour that had perforated my bowel. In the words of the guy that spoke to me, he returned and said, "We've seen something on the scan that we don't like. We think it's going to involve a knife. We don't have a surgeon here, so we're sending you to Waikato." So I was transferred across there. They pumped me full of antibiotics for 3 days, and on December the 30th, 2012, I underwent a sigmoid resection, thankfully without the need for a colostomy bag. Now, the cancer had appeared to metastasize to the liver, so chemotherapy followed in 2013, and after a few follow-up scans, part of my liver was removed in November 2014. Now, all credit to the team at A&E in Thames and the surgical team at Waikato, both surgical teams, who dealt with the matter in an expeditious and efficient manner. In fact, on the liver operation, I was in and out in less than a week because it was done laparoscopically. So thank you for them. Now that brings us to the crux of the matter. My portacath is still in place. So a little while back, my GP Claire Jenks from Waihi Beach Clinic, and I decided that we'd see about getting it removed. She sent off a request. So on Monday the 5th of September, I returned from 2 weeks holiday abroad and found a letter from Thames asking me to attend the General Surgery Minor Ops Department Clinic on Friday the 16th of September. I showed that to my wife and said, "Well, look, they're taking the portacath out." She quite reasonably said, "Well, that's not necessarily the case because in the past there's always been a pre-procedural consultation," which was fair enough. So on Wednesday the 7th of September, about 12 or 12:30, I decided to phone Thames Hospital to find out the answers to the following questions. 1. Was the portacath going to be taken out at that time? 2. How long is the procedure likely to take? 3. How many stitches were involved? And 4. Would I be able to drive myself home afterwards? I phoned out patients, gave my details to the reception, and then asked her if she knew what was going to happen on that day. She said, "Well, you've probably got a small lesion." And I said, "Well, no, I think it's to do with the portacath removal." So at that point things started falling apart. She wasn't sure who to put me through to. So to cut the long story short, there were about 6 phone conversations, during which I was put through to the typists, because apparently they're near Dr. Creamer, and so they might know what's going on. They didn't. I ended up in somebody's voicemail box, who at the end of the message said, "Please remember this is a part-time position, so there may be some delay in getting back to you." It would have been nice at the end of that message if the lady had said when she was actually going to be there, so I could speak to a live person. And on the 6th phone call, I finally got somebody who showed a bit of initiative. I really wish I'd taken her name so I could tell you who she was. But she said that she would email the person that I needed to talk to and would get back to me with the details of that. Now, to that lady's credit, she did phone back in about half an hour, said she'd actually managed to speak to the person who would get back to me sometime before the 16th of December. No, it's not December, September. So, I spent 2.5 hours up to that point either listening, waiting for phone calls, talking to other people. Now, the lady did finally get back to me on Friday the 9th of September. I think it turned out to be Janet Devine, the theatre nurse, and we had a fairly good conversation. But so now we're up to 8 phone calls and 2 days here. Now, it would seem to me that some of it could have been mitigated where if on the original appointment letter there was a little bit at the top that said purpose of appointment, and then it could have said portacath removal or pre-procedural consultation. But no, apparently, according to somebody I spoke to, you're not allowed to do that because it's a privacy issue and somebody else might see the letter. Well, to me, this kind of seems like a committee decision somewhere along the line. Now, look, my wife and I have got a yardstick to deal with all this, to assess how these situations like this could be dealt with. And the yardstick is, how would a little old lady cope with this? Would a little old lady understand this? Would she be able to do it? Now, I think in this situation, the little old lady would have given up after about the second phone call, travelled all the way to Thames Hospital from wherever, been told that the portacath was coming out, and it may not have been convenient for her, so she would have to go away, there'd be a reappointment, everybody's time has been wasted. Now, I've actually rescheduled my appointment to late in November because it's not convenient for me to actually have this done at this stage with what I've got going on in my proper life. And one other thing, sometime during the conversation I was told that this procedure was going to take place in the MOPS room. Now you can imagine what a little old lady would make of that. Hey Bill, they're going to do the operation in a broom cupboard. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I hope that you can understand my frustration with all this. Thanks. Sorry, I missed this bit out. One of the subsequent conversations with the original receptionist, she tried to tell me that she had told me it was a portacath removal, when it was me that had told her it was a portacath removal. I think that needs a little bit of looking into. Right, since you're still here, here's a little anecdote from the chemo room at Thames. I was there one day and for some reason there weren't that many people there. I think there was only about 3 or 4 of us. And there was a lady 2 or 3 chairs down from me who I knew to talk to. She had the whole chemo experience, so hair loss, wearing a bandana, and she kept looking at me. So eventually I said, well, what's the problem? Why do you keep looking at me? And she said, well, how is it if you're having chemo, you've still got all your hair and your beard? And straight off the top of my head, I said, it's because I've got massive amounts of testosterone surging around my body. Now, while she was processing that, Fee, who runs the chemo ward, came out from behind the nurse's station and said, no, it's not. It's because he's not on that sort of chemo, which people found quite amusing. Now, later on, the lady's husband came in and the same thing was happening. He was looking at me. So, same question. Why? What's the matter? Why is it, since you're having chemo, you've still got all your hair and your beard? Now, at this point, I had the only multitasking moment I think I've ever had. Because while I was thinking to myself, I can't use the testosterone gag again because she's already heard that, I heard myself saying, it's because I've got a very high sperm count. Now, everybody laughed at that point. But the guy looked me straight in the eye and said, that's interesting. How does that work? And at that point, his wife hit him. So hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of your day now. Thank you.